if your goal at the end of the class period is to be able to recognize sentence errors, the sentences that are written for you, the sentence that you write, then we're going to go through a quick introduction of what these problems are, what a sentence needs to have in it to be a sound grammatical sentence, and some clues to help you recognize errors along the way that does not involve reteaching you everything that you ever learned about grammar. In a regular sentence that we would say is grammatically sound, it wouldn't get underlined in red or circled on a paper. You have to have two pieces, and a lot of you are probably familiar with these. These two pieces are the subject and the verb. No making fun of my drawings today, but I did want to draw semis for my Prezi, because if you have these two parts, then you kind of take off and drive away, you have what you need. So we have more semis other than this. So a subject and a predicate, which you might call a verb, is all that a sentence needs. So really, even though this sentence is choppy and short, Shania ran, it has everything that it needs. I wouldn't advise writing two-word sentences very often, but it is grammatically sound to have those two together. In this case, you have an action verb. Shania ran, she did something. But please don't forget, if there's anything you can remember from middle school grammar, what linking verbs are. Linking verbs are the am, is, are, was, were. These verbs don't really look like action verbs, but they do give action. I don't think, I put a kind of a broken tire on this, I don't think that writing with these types of sentences with linking verbs creates quality writing, because even though this is a sentence, she is, it doesn't have much description, it's very vague, you can't tell exactly what it's about. So they would probably want to repair this and give it an action verb. This is where your notes should begin. Forgot your notes. So if those are the two parts you have to have in a sentence, the subject and a verb, if you're missing a key piece, it's called a sentence fragment. So you're either going to be missing part of the subject or part of the verb. So sentence fragments are missing a key piece of a proper sentence, either the subject or the predicate. And then you'll see I gave you some examples that aren't my Prezi. Sometimes if you have a sentence that isn't a complete idea, that something is missing, such as the sentence, since we moved to Ohio, it's not missing a subject or a verb, but we don't know what happened since you moved to Ohio. Since you moved to Ohio, you became incredibly depressed. Since you moved to Ohio, all you can think about is the beach. Here's the problem, is that none of you, not one single person in here, writes in completely simple, short, choppy sentences. I mean, it's fine for a worksheet. If I were to give you a worksheet with lots of short sentences, you'd probably be able to do a good job at finding errors, but when you write, it's just a mess. It's all over the place. I mean, your words are just all intertwined, whatever your ideas in your brain do to your words, I'm not sure, but when it comes out on the page, it's not so neat and orderly. So, even though this is a sentence, we have a lot of other parts of sentences. For my purposes, without going back and telling you about prepositional phrases or clauses, predicate nominatives, we're going to call these phrases. Other additional phrases. In this case, this is a prepositional phrase, where you have other pieces in your sentences other than just what the sentence is about in the action. Here's one with three pieces. Shania, tired and worn, ran in the marathon on the 4th of July. These pieces are really what make a quality piece of writing. Writing's not going to be interesting to read or sound classy or eloquent at all unless you can make your sentences in all different ways, with all different types of pieces. Alright, so here's where you can actually see some of the slides that are showing up in your notebook 13. You may have to kind of jump around, but you shouldn't have to flip too much. When we're talking about the crimes that are committed by students in their writing, I'd say number one crime is not having real sentences. We're going to first start talking about run-on sentences. And they are what they sound. They keep going and they keep going and they keep going. And this is where two or more, I've seen like 6 in a paragraph, where a paragraph is one big long sentence and it's actually 6 run-on sentences all together. Whenever you take 2 sentences that should be by themselves and you stick them all together, you make a run-on sentence. This is when you don't have the right punctuation. I'll show you a couple examples down here. And here's how you can tell if you have 2 sentences that can stand alone that are crammed into the same space. I'm going to teach you my advanced comp trick. Because in advanced comp, I said we don't ever go back to freshman or middle school grammar. I mean, it's 12th grade. You can't go back. And so they say, well, how can I tell if I've had a run-on? How can I tell if I have a sentence error? And it's pretty simple. Look at your example. You can do this with me. I always tell them to start at the beginning of a sentence and start underline. And I say you can stop whenever you have a sentence that can stand by itself. So they start and they say, Michelle loves. They said, oh, well, I got a subject, I got a verb, so I can stop. And I say, okay, well, what you do now is you look through the rest of the sentence. Do you have any more little sentence chunks, sentence pieces? And he keeps reading, to draw horses, and she is. Well, she is stands by itself. So if you can just find the pieces that can stand by themselves, that's not too hard. Nod your head if you think you can probably find little pieces that can stand by themselves. Then all you have to do is look in the space between. Somewhere in the space between, you've joined them. We'll talk about the correct ways you can join them. In this case, they try to join with a conjunction, and they're going to need a comma. That's what made the run-on sentence. It didn't have the proper punctuation. So this sentence was incorrect because the two parts that could stand by themselves, that were independent, were stuck together without the proper punctuation jammed into the same space. I took a picture of the screen. I did not mean to. It'll do it sometimes whether I want it to. Closing. It's videotape. I'm trying to clear the ink on there. I don't know how many of you are comma abusers and comma addicts. But if you've ever tried to use commas to fix problems, like, it looks wrong, I'm just going to put a comma in there. Raise your hands. If you ever just stick commas wherever you want because it's like, I think it sounds good there, let's put one there. Comma abusers, you're probably guilty of this type of sentence error. And I always call it comma glue. Because you would think, well, if I have two sentences, can I just stick a comma in there? Is that good to join them together? And if you do that, you actually make something called a comma splice. A comma splice is two complete sentences joined with a comma. So if you had this sentence and you're like, something looks wrong. Oh, you think it's a run-on. Look, it's got two independent parts. And you're like, I'm fixing it. Like Randa. Just sticking a comma in there. You actually make another type of error called a comma splice. Commas are not enough. You need a comma. If you want to use a comma, Randa, you got to have like a conjunction with it. I think you're going to be a fan. If you like commas, you're going to be a fan of the semicolon because it's like kind of a cheaper and easy version to help fix some of these errors. So you don't want to just stick them together with a comma. Commas are not enough. So these were your hints to help you catch them. When you read, be aware of those independent pieces, those little pieces that can stand on their own. If you ever see a sentence that has two things going on, two subjects, or a subject and a pronoun, be aware, because 9 times out of 10, in advanced comp, kids can understand very, very easily what a complete sentence is. But there's something about pronouns that get them, even if the same subject is renamed, even if the sentence is all about Strittenberger. Strittenberger loves coffee in the morning, and she drinks too much of it. Even though that whole sentence is about me, there's actually two parts to that sentence. Strittenberger drinks coffee in the morning, and she is super caffeinated. So there's pronouns, and you'll see those in your examples on your CPS check. Can sometimes trip kids up because they're like, well, they're talking about the same thing. Here are the 3 ways we're going to fix sentence errors. Okay? Whether it's a comma splice or a run-on. You can either break them into 2 separate sentences. That makes for really crappy writing, though. School is good. I love school. But school can be hard because you're just writing in short little choppy ones because you don't want to stick 2 sentences together. So if you would like to use a glue to hold these together, it has to be a semicolon. Semicolon looks like this. Like kids are like, oh, I always wondered what you use that for. And you can use it instead of a comma and a conjunction, you can glue 2 sentences together with it. The best one is number 3 because it makes for longer, lengthier, more sophisticated sentences. And that is using a comma and a conjunction. Alright. was turned in during the first semester last year of advanced comp. It's teenage boys paper. I try to leave it anonymous. But this was his rough draft, because I have them sometimes turn their drafts electronically to me, and then I have a bunch saved on my computer. And so I wanted to read his purple little passage to us, and then I'm going to call in some people in the class to see if they can help me figure out the sentence errors that he had. So it starts like this: what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. To me, this means that in life I can only get stronger. This, I believe, is one of the greatest pieces of advice that has ever been given to me. The most important aspect about this is that it's true and it can apply to all people. All people in life go through struggles, and if they make it through, they are stronger people because of it. I have taken this advice and put it to use, and I believe I am a better person because of it. In the other classes, we weren't videotaping, and so I had people come up to help fix. If anyone would be willing other than me to help correct some of these, even though you might be in the video, you can volunteer now. But if not, I'll go ahead and call in some people from your seats to correct them. I better use a bright color. So there are sentence errors in here, and the start of recognizing them is to be able to figure out where some of these independent clauses are. So there are three errors.